hello out there in FinTech land, and hello live from Finovate. This is Sam Kilmer, Managing Director of Cornerstone Advisors, leader of the FinTech Advisory Practice, and I'm joined here in the Marriott Marquis on Times Square. We got Back to the Future musical going on back here in the distance, but we have two rock stars up front here. We have Emily Steele, who is the president and COO of Savannah, joining us today from Finovate, and we also have John Waupsh, who's the CEO and co-founder of Nerve. I'm always honored to be in the company of just people that I've known in the business for a long time, that Ron Shevlin and Mary Wisniewski and Al Dominic and I have had the honor to hang out with. And these guys are among them. So I think in true FinTech hustle fashion, we're going to try to keep it fast and loose today around just what are these guys seeing in the industry and what are they seeing and hearing in the sessions at Finovate. I'm really going to need their help today because unfortunately last night, my flight was canceled, so I had to fly in this morning. I've literally been to like 2 demos and half of a panel session, so I'm probably just going to be basically working on fumes and buzzwords at this stage, John. So no buzzwords. There'll be no buzzwords, but just hey guys, let's just start off with tell me a little bit about a day in your life. What's a day in the life of Emily Steele look like in FinTech land? Emily, give me your best shot.
Day in the life.
What do you do on a given day?
Let's see. A day in the life of FinTech for me is, look, I've spent my career focused on two things. Most of the time it is customer experience. But I've switched that a little bit now. And now I'm focused on bankers experience because I feel as though the two go hand in hand, but so often we only talk about one side of that coin, and it's really the customer experience. And I think if we focus a bit on the banker experience a little bit more, it actually will improve the customer experience. So right now, a day in the life of me is talking to bankers, just to find out what are the problems that they're having and hopefully find a way that Savannah might be able to help them.
Good stuff. And this is not your first hayride, right? So this is like Accelerant, Timino, Sanchez, FIS. So in terms of no. This has all happened in a 9-month period. Yeah. No, so I hear what you're saying. So what about you, John? What's a day in the life of John looking like these days?
Day in the life. Let's see. Primarily, it's about we do embedded banking in the creator space. So primarily, my world is trying to figure out, who are those platforms that work with creators? How do they work with creators, and how can we help solve their needs? So it's more about platform experience maybe than banker experience. But nevertheless, the point is the same. That there's absolutely the attention that you need to pay on your consumer or your creator or whoever that end user is, but oftentimes there are other users in between, and whether it's a banker or bankers, and also the in our experience with us, the platform partner and how they distribute our product and how they embed the product, et cetera.
Very interesting. I think it seems appropriate that Nerve, it started out initially, correct me if I'm wrong, focused on musicians. Yeah. Is that musicians? So we're standing here outside the Al Jolson room. And let's see, I believe that's probably the John Barrymore, not the Drew Barrymore. Probably not the Drew Barrymore room. We're over the top here, the Broadway Lounge. It seems like this should feel like home. I know you're Austin, but so this is New York. I mean, this is kind of where it's at in terms of entertainment. And I guess one thing I would ask you as you guys, as you've been here thus far longer than I have at Finovate. What have you been seeing and hearing in the halls here? I mean, like, what's the sidebar chatter been, or maybe even what's the stage chatter that's been resonating with you best? I don't know, John. You want to start with you?
Sure, I'll go with that. The basically what I've been seeing, I don't really know what. Let's be honest, I don't listen to what people say.
You're really focused on.
I'm barely listening to you, Sam.
That's probably just as well.
Now, the stuff that I keep seeing is the level of depth that I believe a lot of, the FinTech is at now, right? I mean, there's, we were so long, we were kind of on that topical level. And now when you see a demo, the demos are, and the products are solving many times banker problems, or, for instance, saw a great one today where the card is both for payments, but also security as well. So, it's kind of solving an MFA issue through NFC. And that was an incredible solution. We've seen a lot of card products at Finovate over the last, decade and a half, but that really felt like something that wasn't a solution looking for a problem and required several layers of innovation over the last number of years for that to actually come to fruition, right? So that was CompuSecure, I believe, that was doing that product. But anyway, that's where the things that I'm seeing at least tend to be layers deep solutions, as opposed to maybe sort of where we were a decade ago.
Right. Where a lot of times it seemed like it was kind of pipe dreamish, but pretty much getting beyond the buzzword level. I like the fact that you had a session where it was multiple acronyms and yet it was still legit, so that we weren't just, if I was like, when I did sit in 3 sessions and it seemed like everybody was either dealing in AI or API. So A and I are the favored letters of the acronym right now. But what about you, Emily? What are you seeing in here at Finovate?
Yeah, so it's not dissimilar, but I would take it one level further is the depth of the demos and I agree, not the blah, blah, blah buzzwords. But what I'm also hearing differently is a lot more around partnerships and really solutions coming together to solve and then taking it to the integration layer. It's one thing to roll out all of this new technology, but it's being coupled with a conversation around how do you actually integrate it and make it work at a bank? Not just how do I buy it, put it on a shelf and hope and pray, but instead, how do we actually integrate it with our entire ecosystem such that it really can be used, for the long term, if you will. So starting to hear a lot more on the integration layer. The other thing that I found interesting is not quite as much of let me buy everything in a full stack, a lot more of beginning to hear again, and this is cyclical, right? It's let me buy everything from one vendor so it's all sticky and sticks together. Then the next 2 years later, we talk about let me buy best in breed. I like a best in breed buy because I don't believe in one-stop shopping entirely. And we're hearing that a lot, or I'm hearing it a lot from banks, credit unions, and fintechs talking about, what are you doing? How do we couple together? How do we integrate it and make it actually solve real problems for the bank? So.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like I'm similar to what I'm seeing smaller and smaller organizations, banks and credit unions, get into the integration game. I think some of the smaller credit unions maybe had development teams over the years, but it was pretty rare for a small community bank to have 3 or 4 developers focused on integration. It seems like it's more, maybe not the norm, but it seems like it's heading that way, that they need to have those resources just to be competitive. But I don't know if you guys have
I completely agree. And Sam, one of the things from my point of view, the reason I'm so focused on the banker is part of the challenge that I see today is all of these systems that have been put into banks for the right reasons, right? They've been adding software that is helping them in this digital game that everybody's playing, but it's created complexity inside of the bank because of the lack of integration between those softwares. So for me, because I'm so obsessed right now with the banker experience, I feel as though now if we do talk about it from an integration perspective, we can make a real difference. And I'm talking to lots of community banks, credit unions of all sizes, not just the big banks that are then able to create that experience, but bringing that down to a community bank level and a regional bank. And without integration, I don't think that they can achieve the right customer experiences or those that are going to keep that stickiness of a loyal customer.
Yeah, I think the other thing that jumped out at me is you mentioned partnerships. And in the same way that a lot of banks and credit unions have not historically had a lot of dev teams internally, and they just assumed that their primary provider or maybe secondary or tertiary provider would have those resources for them. I think the other thing that I'm seeing more and more now is what partnership resources, maybe I have strong commercial lenders and I'm very comfortable with commercial lending deals, but I really have no idea about how to broker a great fintech deal. So just having, how many people do I need to have on my team, whether it's compliance people or actual just like deal maker type people to make some of these deals happen, depending upon how much of that they're doing. And so I have a panel session tomorrow, no plug, but because I'm pretty sure this might be coming out after it anyway, so I'm not plugging. But with some bankers talking a little bit about that, but they're bigger banks, and I'm starting to see it with even some more with some smaller banks. And I don't know about you, John.
I'm sorry. There's so many banks today that, and credit unions too, but banks in general seem to be hyper focused the last couple of years on building sort of a connectivity that they could then use for partnering with other fintechs, almost, whether you want to call it a BaaS style relationship, but the it doesn't necessarily need to be in the sponsor bank vein. But what really has kind of surprised me is, the level, to your point, the level of let's bring in these technologists, let's bring in these people to kind of write and figure out, how we can build this connectivity to our core. But the lack of project management that I've seen at those same banks sometimes has not necessarily created the fastest or the best execution. And so there's sometimes the miss is not necessarily on the technology side. It's almost more on the project management side. But for those banks that and credit unions that have like stuck with it and kind of figured out that couple year journey, it's amazing to see where they are today. They're kind of positioned in this world where they're maybe not necessarily thinking about, or maybe they had already thought about third party and fourth party risk. They're now sort of taking that discussion away because they can pull that fintech and that fintech's customer base a heck of a lot closer than maybe having a BaaS or some other company in between. Anyway, that's at least from my perspective, that's a big part of what I've seen.
Not that dissimilar. John and I had an opportunity, Sam, we were connecting and doing a little bit of
trading notes before the broadcast.
We were just chit chatting. No, we were just.
It
was just chit chatting. But if we take the partner concept to you mentioned BaaS and embedded banking. One of the things we were talking about is the complexity of banks, credit unions trying to adopt something like fintechs. And we've been talking about those. They are buzzwords now, right? People are kind of tired of hearing about them. But we were talking about that it's starting to come to fruition now because banks, one, brings them revenue, two, brings them additional products to improve the customer experience, makes them more hip, right? But more importantly, the banks now are getting technology through the right partners to support the fintechs in bringing embedded banking to life, not just talk about it, but bringing it to life. So I think partnerships, I didn't know you were speaking. I'll take the plug. I'm going to come see it. I think partnerships comes in so many different forms. It's about how do you partner to get the right project management so that projects don't die on a vine, but you actually get them successful early and often. But what about partnerships for vendor management? Because if you're a community bank or a credit union, there's so much to manage now. You need the right partners to help you in some of that because they don't have unlimited resources like the big banks that you might be talking about. So I love the partnership topic too, because it's so many different forms.
When you get to vendor management or even contract negotiation, all of that other fun stuff, are you?
It is fun.
Is that
no sarcasm?
I mean, really, it's so important though, and I don't know where that normally sits at the bank. Is that a CFO?
So that's what, and I'm speaking of this, by the way, is because the contracts, I don't negotiate contracts normally as at Cornerstone we do, but I did as a banker. And I would bring in third parties or whatever. And sometimes I would do some of the things myself. And I think you asked the right question, which is who's overseeing it? Ideally, the CFO or there's somebody internally that's brokering all the handoffs. The issue has been historically is that whether it's partnerships for fintech or partnerships for vendor management, it's decentralized. So one of the challenges of the financial services industry, I wouldn't say fintechs as much as banks and credit unions, is that many functions are decentralized. Revenue generally is decentralized. You've got lenders, you've got payments might be over in retail or whatever. So I think you all have seen where you'll go into a bank and you're trying to figure out who's in charge of revenue or who the VP of sales is, and there isn't one, and then you're like, okay, that's a little squishy. And then sometimes even in the cost side, the CFO doesn't even have as much oversight as you might think. So actually, that's one of the first things we start looking into. And I think one of the promising things, one of the positives, I guess, of this conversation is around partnerships, is that people can start thinking about a deliberate cycle of review and getting visibility and transparency into all that, because it does matter so much. So that's the good side of it. I do think it's getting better, but it's been piecemeal and decentralized for a long time. But we've been positive here long enough. Let's go negative for a minute before we're done here. So we've talked a little bit about things that you guys think maybe you're seeing here, the things that seem to be working a lot better. What's something that you see in fintech or in banking right now that you think is just not working well, not cutting it? I'm not trying to put you on the spot as much as really just have a real-time discussion around things that could be way better than it is now. Is there something you see that's kind of broken in banking or fintech, or that you think could be just way better than it is right now? Emily, I don't know if you've got anything.
I do. I feel like we keep coming about what modernization and transformation is exactly the same. I've been in this space. You mentioned a few companies there that might have said that it's been a long time I've been in this space, and we're still talking 9 months. 9 months. But when everybody associates modernization with core transformation or go replace something on digital. And I would challenge that just because cores are 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years old, we need to ask the question of, are they serving its purpose? Not everything in a bank that's a problem has to be a core conversion, right? Core banking was intended to be specifically about transactions, ledgers, product manufacturing, but we're expecting the core to do everything. And if a core is over 10 years, it's like, I got to go get a new modern core. I think that's a problem, and we can't keep looking at modernization of just saying core transformation. We have to look at the actual bank's problems and identify where are those coming from. And over the last 2 days, I've had the pleasure of talking to lots of credit unions and banks that are saying, okay, then let me share with you some of the things that I'm seeing. And it's about disconnected processes. It's about can't gain the right efficiencies, can't figure out where data is. And I would challenge us, let's not just replace the core because it's the easy fall guy. Cores take a lot of heat that, we got to replace them. But the reality is, let's solve the real problem. And I think it's not always the back end or the front end. Sometimes it's inside of the bank. And I don't think that we're replacing software and modernizing and helping the banker to solve those problems. So for me, not a negative, but an opportunity.
Sure. John, what do you think?
I have got nothing. I think fintech is absolutely perfect.
Oh.
Everything in this building is working. There it is. Everything is awesome. No, I think to take. I think there's always this. The pendulum kind of swings, right? And so everyone loves to talk about AI, or did at least a year ago. Maybe now it's still sounding buzzy. But, and so it started to feel like, goodness, is the only real use case, at least right off the jump, is the only real use case customer service, which is a nice one, I guess. And then do people really just want to talk to chatbots all the time? And so
as a consumer,
I don't want to talk to a chatbot.
Because as a consumer, I don't know that I feel that's the right thing to focus on. It's not what I want. So is that the experience that you're thinking too?
I mean, I definitely, I definitely agree that talking to a chatbot is never fulfilling. But at the same time, it's terrible. Usually it's a terrible experience. But for instance, there have been demos here where the chatbot has evolved upon, right? And there's essentially technology that's being used in building movies today that's being used now to create kind of a human on top of the chatbot. So you're actually now talking to somebody who kind of looks and acts human. And that, at least from an evolution standpoint, makes a lot of sense, I think. But it also, it finally brings kind of the hype into a little bit more normalcy where you're going, okay, well, I can kind of see that being used. Now, is it going to work in every application? Of course not. I'm on a phone or whatever, and I just want to talk to a human. Can you please stop, assuming I said this thing whenever I said this, or whatever the case may be. But to me, that's like every Finovate, even you start to see the hype start to become rationalized, where you're like, okay, the thing that was a little bit blown out of proportion, but required investment, required a lot of that hype in order to get to where it is today, is at a place where it's actually starting to be consumable.
Sure.
At the bank level, at the credit union level, and at the consumer level.
Yeah.
I had one thing
Yeah,
on this,
please.
Sam.
Yeah.
I'm going to use some fintech or Finovate. Today I was at lunch, and I love what you said because I could not, John, agree with you more. I had someone who I was sitting eating lunch with today say to me, "I'm looking at your sign, Savannah, no pitch, and I don't see AI anywhere." And I'm like, And they said, "Why?"
Note to self, Savannah.ai.
Right? No. He said, "Why?" No, Sam. That's what he said. He goes, "Why doesn't it say Savannah.ai?" And I said, "Look, I think AI is cool and all. I said, but we got to find a real problem to solve before we actually invest."
Yeah.
Because so I love that you said, and we just said it about embedded banking. Sometimes we talk about these things to where we end up. We're so tired of hearing the buzzword, and finally the technology catches up with a real problem to solve. But I thought it was funny. He's like, add AI to your name.
Well, and I think
Not yet.
Well, one of the things I think of companies that don't have AI in their name that have been doing AI for the longest time, and they tend to be in the fraud reduction area, right?
For sure.
So it's almost like, to me, what I'm looking for is, when are the heavies that really do the heavy lifting in some of the proven case in fraud reduction? When are their skills getting transferred into this natural language stuff? Because right now, most of it's
some of it some of it that now you're starting to see on like voice authentication and this type of stuff that may be used. And so, I see all of those use cases. They're way less sexy. Nobody really talks about them anymore. I mean, just because we've heard about voice authentication for 15 years or whatever, it's not necessarily been the best. But you see, okay, well, what's the intonation? How is this customer reacting? And then, how does that feed through to how the person should respond if there's an actual human on the other side? Right. And so you see a lot of that, really kind of, trickling into the conversation, I think into actual deployments. But I guess those are huge businesses. Right. Not to minimize them, but also it seems like there should be so much more that's really changing our lives today. And we're getting there, but we're not there yet.
Oh, and I not to diminish it too, and it's not a plug for anybody in particular, but I'm watching all these deployments that are going in of Glia and Agent IQ and Posh and all these. And actually, to me, that's really promising stuff, because you've got dedicated entrepreneurs with dedicated subject matter expertise, and they're applying it right now. And like a lot of times when bankers will reach out to us and say, give us the playbook, and sometimes we'll have to say, look, if you're asking us about commercial loan process improvement, there's a playbook. If you're asking us about, victory in AI, the playbook is still being written. We're still making this shit up, so it's okay to say that. And but guys, I appreciate you taking the time to go both positive and negative with me and everything. And so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. Hold this for just a second, if you would, John. I want to present
trophies. We get trophies.
You guys do get everybody gets a trophy. Are you kidding me?
No, we don't need.
This is 2023. This is a FinTech Hustle double album coaster set. Do not put your needle on this. Put your Buzzy drink on it.
I love it. Thank you.
You betcha.
Thank you,
And
Sam.
also, because I know you guys you're dying for hatware, we've got a nice. These are not endorsed by Cool J or Run DMC, but nevertheless, I think that you'll like them.
But by Sam Kilmer?
They are endorsed by me, not Ron Shevlin. Unfortunately, Ron does not support the hats. Ron's against it. No, he's not wearing the hat, but that's okay.
Sam playlist on this?
There's not, but I can send you one separately. So, but thanks again for joining me on the FinTech Hustle, and we're in the hall live here at Finovate, Marriott Marquis, New York City, loving it. Back to you, and thank you so much. Join us again on the next episode.